Greetings. I'd like to preface this video with a disclaimer that I am not an expert when it comes to teaching in a hybrid synchronous instructional model. I've never done this before, so I'll be as new to this as you are. But with that being said, I would be lying if I didn't tell you that I'm actually pretty excited to take on this challenge. Last spring, when we went completely virtual, we all adapted to a totally new type of teaching and learning that was really different from anything that we had experienced before. And now we're transitioning again as we work to meet the learning needs of students both in our classrooms but also at home at the same time. And so I think we could agree that this coming school year will be a year like no other. I remember when we arrived at school last year at this time, I was incredibly excited to start these face-to-face connections with kids again, share stories, personal anecdotes, engage in rich discussions, laugh together, just do what we came into this profession for, connect with kids, learn together, grow together. And it was a lot harder in the spring when we weren't together. And so I'm excited for this opportunity to be able to be together with some of my students, even though some of them will be at home. And I think that some of the tools that I'm about to showcase will help make that a success. At least I hope so. So I'm going to break this video up into 4 sections, and you should be able to move through the video, the 4 sections of the video however you like. YouTube does allow me to add little bookmarks, so you'll see little bookmarks if you drag along the bottom of your screen. You'll see little bookmarks where you can jump ahead because some of this you may not be interested in. So I'm actually going to start by talking about PearDeck and how we can use PearDeck both in our classroom but also have kids access lectures and stuff at home in real time and really be learning with us in a really productive way. The thing I like most about PearDeck is the immediate and instant feedback that you get from kids and the fact that you can get that feedback from a distance. I think that's really, really cool. I'm going to transition then to talking a bit about iPads. We've got these, we'll have these iPads to use in our classroom this year, which I'm super excited about. As you'll learn about, the iPads are largely there to serve as a stand-in for the students that are at home, right? So you'll be using it essentially to film you, but I wanted to share some other use cases that I think the iPad could come in really handy for you, almost as a way to telestrate or to use the iPad as a whiteboard for the kids at home and for the kids in your classroom. And then finally, thirdly, I'm going to move to talk a little bit about PowerPoint and Google Slides features that I think would really, really benefit students at home that you may not know about. So things like live captioning for, if audio is kind of choppy and not really working very well, you can actually turn on closed captioning almost for your lectures so that they can be understanding you a little bit better by being able to read what you're saying. And then finally, I want to talk a little bit about a proprietary app that Apple makes, but it is completely free. Anyone can sign up for it. It's called Keynote. And it's a lot like PowerPoint, but there are some advantages to using Keynote. So again, I'm just going to share them. If you find any of it helpful, then that's great. It will have made this time worth it. And if not, then I wish you luck with whatever your plans are. And I would love for you to share with me as well, because hopefully we can grow and learn and succeed together. So, all right, so I'm going to transition now. And if you see me change my shirt or something a couple times, that's probably because I wasn't able to finish this video in one sitting because I got little ones running around here at home and it gets kind of crazy. So, all right, folks, on to the first one. All right, so the first tool or piece of software that I would like to share is PearDeck. Now, I know I've talked about PearDeck a lot. People that sit down with me at lunch probably are sick of me talking about it as if I'm like a missionary for PearDeck or something like that. But I just think it's great. I think it does an amazing job of taking lectures presentations that you've already created, and very, very easily allowing all of your students to engage with it and really be able to get some formal and summative assessment if you prefer to have it that way. So I just kind of wanted to show you how this works for those of you that have never used PearDeck before. Last year we had a site license, so everyone was able to install PearDeck premium features for free. I'm not certain if we have that. That's something that'll be a question for Angela, I guess. But I know that I specifically requested one, and I absolutely love PearDeck and everything that it allowed me to do even last year in the spring when I was teaching from home and wanted to really kind of, you can't get that instant feedback. You can't just pose a question to your students and see if they're really following along and comprehending. And PearDeck allows for that in a way that I wasn't able to do otherwise. So PearDeck is cool. I mean, as you can see here, I've created this presentation just in Google Slides, like any other thing that I would be using to teach. My kids complete guided notes as they're learning with me and so on and so forth. And my plan is to still do that this year, have guided notes that I can send home with kids for when they're at home, and also have them available for kids when they're in class. But I won't be able to ask students that are sitting at home every single day, questions to verify whether or not they're getting it as simply as I can do using PearDeck. So I kind of wanted to show you, I have the PearDeck add-on already installed. So this must be an add of some sort. So I'm going to go to the add-ons, and I'm just going to turn the PearDeck add-on on here, and you'll see it appear here in the right. Here we go. So PearDeck is really cool because, again, you can take an existing slideshow and you could just add questions to it. Like you can add a text question or a multiple choice question. They can type a number in, or you can even have them go to a website. So if you're learning about something and you want them to read something, maybe on the New York Times or whatever, you can instantly push that website to every single person's device that's following along with your lecture. And the other thing that's great about PearDeck that I forgot to mention in the beginning of this is one of the challenges to teaching synchronously to kids that are in your room and kids that are at home is if you're using the iPad to film you at the front of your room, it's not going to look right? You might get some glare on the television, and PearDeck allows kids to follow along at home in real time in their own browser. So you can have the lecture up in front of the room, and kids can also have it open in the classroom. This is great for even kids that have vision problems, but also kids that are at home can have the lecture up, so they're not like squinting at their screen trying to figure out what you're pointing at, because they'll see it on their Chromebooks, which I think is just amazing. So you can just put in these questions. I already created these questions, but I just want to show you how easy it is. So if I wanted to ask a question, like a brainstorming prior knowledge question right on the first slide, I could very easily just ask, like a text question right here. And it's going to pull up this PearDeck interactive question thing. They have a lot of templates and stuff for you, but you'll notice right here, students write your response, and you can just add the question in. Whoops, sorry. So the question, you would have to put it on the slide someplace. So it's kind of hard to see what the students see, but if you had a question typed up on your slide just as part of your lecture, the students would see that question. And then in addition to them seeing your slide, they would have a question that they have to respond to. So maybe you'd have a question like, all right, thinking back to when we learned about chromosomes, how many chromosomes do humans have? Something like that. And they could respond to it, and then you, on your device, would be able to get an instant feedback of what kids are writing, which I think is cool. I have some already created here. So for instance, you'll notice I typed up a question on this slide, drag the red dot to the picture that does not illustrate a genetic trait. So they're supposed to figure out which of these 3 traits, a widow's peak, freckles or red hair, or buffness, so to speak, is not genetic. And then I created an answer key for the following slide. If you're teaching in real time, you don't need to create an answer key. I actually did this last year, for when we were entirely virtual, because a lot of kids were learning asynchronously. And I just identified the question slides by making them this red background, so it was easier for me to follow along as we were doing that. But I just absolutely love this part about PearDeck, that you can start the lesson. I'm going to try to show you what it looks like when you start it. So you can add in all these questions. And by the way, There are way more question types. You can actually have a template library. So if you want a beginning of your lesson type of question, they'll have like full slides. You don't even have to make a slide. It'll just put a slide in there for you. So right now, what did you learn from your homework? That one's already, that's a question that's prepared for you. You could just edit that question and that's what would appear on their device and give them a field for them to answer that question. I really like too that they have drawing slides so they can draw right on their screens. It's hard for me to be both the student and the teacher here as I'm explaining this, so I know I'm not doing as good of a job here, but it's really, really cool. So when you're starting your lesson, I'm gonna try to start the lesson here. Here's the other thing that's really cool. You can have it both be student-paced or instructor-paced. So if you have a student that really is really getting it and you want them to be able to work ahead, I would click the student-paced activity. I like, if I'm teaching in real time, either virtually or otherwise, as you notice here, I like the real-time stuff. So even the kids at home, they can't work ahead. They have to be listening to you over the live stream, over Google Meet, in order to be able to answer the questions and be part of, I think it also helps them to be, oops, I gotta just log back in here. It also helps them to feel, if you're doing it in real time, I think, like they're part of the classroom even though they're at home. So this is what it looks like when you launch it. Now, the kids, whether they're at home or not, you have this join code. So now I have them both showing up here. I can drag it off. I actually have two monitors set up here in my room, but they're going to get this join code. They go to joinpd.com. They type in this 5-character code, and you'll see the students start to pop up in here, which is really, really cool. Now I'm actually going to show you what this looks like. All right. So I want to show you from my standpoint. This is what it would look like on a student's device. So you'll notice once the students log in, they just get, they just get the lecture. Yours still looks a little bit different, but they just get the lecture as you want them to see it. So again, kids don't have to be looking through your iPad webcam to see what's on the board as you're teaching them. They'll see it on their device, which I think is really cool. But I wanted to show you, I'm gonna start it. You'll notice it says I have one student in this class, which is me. But the other thing is you'll notice that since I'm the teacher, I also have this other pane. So I can see, like I can add questions in real time right here, which is super awesome. So as I'm learning, if I think of a question that I have for kids at home and in the thing, I can add one even if I haven't built it into the lecture beforehand, which is really, really nice. But I can also move separately. So I can pull up my phone if I wanted to as well, or use the iPad that I have in the classroom to actually act as like, to control the dashboard and to throw out questions to the kids so that I don't have it covering up the screen that I'm presenting to the kids. So I'm gonna move here. I'm gonna go to the questions slide and show you. So again, this is what the kids will see, right? Same thing that you see on my screen. But if I go to a question now, you'll notice that on the screen here, I have the question. But what the kids see actually allows, I don't know if you can see that very well, I'm so sorry. But I can drag this dot. This is really hard. I can actually manipulate it, right? So I can move this around wherever as a student and I can answer the question. So buffness is not a genetic trait, right? That's something that you have to work for in the gym. And then for the teacher's point of view, I'm gonna drag this back in, right? Because this is the dashboard, right? You can lock them so the kids can't change their answers. So I'm gonna lock it, and the screen's locked now, and then I can show the responses. So this is, then I can talk about it, right? There's gonna be dots all over here, right? Because not all students are gonna answer the same way. But the other thing I love about this is you can stack them, right? You can overlay the responses, or you can do a grid layout. Right here, it's named me. But what I like about this is I can, if there's a student in class that doesn't like to share, they're really shy, I can actually make that student feel really good about him or herself by, I notice that they got the right answer, and then I can hopefully boost their confidence by using them as an example. And I often don't have the students log in with their real names. I have them or with their school Google account, just because I'm using this more formatively. And I find that if the kids can have an anonymous name there, they're a little bit more free to be wrong and just do the best that they can. But I also like, again, that if I had 25 kids in the class, you could have them all overlaid here. So again, I just think that's really cool. You'll notice that as I move my dashboard here, it changes what the kids see both in the classroom and at home. And again, it works otherwise exactly like Google Slides does, right? I can have things pop in, questions pop up, right? Just like that one. I'm going to try, and then I have the answer key, of course. I don't know where my thing here went. Oh, sorry. So I'm going to go to one more question just to show you. This one's kind of cool. So for this question, it says, pretend you're a person labeled me. So you're this person right here. Circle the individuals you inherit genetic traits from. This is not a good example because actually I remember I screwed this one up. Here, I'm going to do a multiple choice question instead. So this is a multiple choice question that I asked. What is a chromosome? What is this chromosome chart called? I wanted them to remember that term. And you'll notice that on the kids' screens, they're going to get this multiple choice. Is a pedigree, a karyotype, or a cladogram? And then they answer it. Now, it's not graded. I could say, oh, that's a karyotype. And again, as the teacher, you get this cool platform, or you get this cool thing that you can show to the students then. So I can say, on a separate device that I want to show the responses, and now everyone sees kind of how the class is doing. You see as the teacher how your students are doing in real time, whether they're in your room or at home.
All right, so I realized you couldn't see the screen on my iPad screen using the webcam on my MacBook. So I decided I was just going to show you by taking a little sample from my iPad instead. So this is what I was referring to. This is the view that the students will get so they can follow along with your lecture. But I wanted to show you what it's going to look like when using the dashboard in PearDeck, you actually change to a question slide. So I'm going to skip ahead to a question slide. You'll notice that the student devices change along with it. But again, what's really cool is you can grab this now and you can manipulate this to answer the question. So again, drag the red dot on the picture that does not illustrate the genetic trait. Hopefully kids know that muscles and leanness and whatnot is acquired, not inherited, but freckles and a widow's peak are inherited. And then, like I said, I actually built in an answer key. So if that's what the student is answering, they can then look to see what the answer is on the next one. So I provided the answers because I thought that would be beneficial in the spring when we were entirely virtual, but I think I'm going to leave answers in for this fall as well for kids at home, which may have a difficulty hearing the answers, but would be able to see it right on their screen. Again, this is what a multiple choice question would look like in PearDeck that you could pose to them. So as you're teaching them about traits, you can, on the screen, they'll have like just the question, but here they have the ability to choose their answer. So what's the name of this image? The kids learn that that's called a karyotype. Now again, it's not going to give the answer here. It shows like all the responses on the teacher's device, but then again, I can push the answer to the kids to tell them that the answer was B, karyotype, and that shows up on their device. So I think it's really, really neat. All sorts of question types, like this one, for instance, where you can even have them draw. So you'll notice down here, they can actually choose the size of like their pen selector. And then they can draw right on the slide, where's the gene height? And they can say, well, they know that tall is height, and you can see parent 2 here. So they could just draw an arrow pointing right to the tall allele. And then again, the answer would show if they got it right or not. So I just really love PearDeck. I love the interactive nature of it and the ability to just constantly be formatively assessing students. So yeah. Thanks.
This is something else I wanted to show you. You can name the session, and then you can actually publish takeaways. So here, let me put my iPad down here. So I'm going to name this demo, and then right here, publish student takeaways. This is just amazing. So if you click this box and you click Save and End Session, since the student's logged in with a Google account, you can share the takeaways in the session to just your Google Classroom, or you could share this link. And they will actually get the whole lecture published to them. So it's almost like you're recording the lecture and their responses, but it'll also post all of their answers to any of the questions you asked, as well as posting the answer key if you created one like I did here. And I think that that's just a really, really good way for them to keep studying and really cement their knowledge of whatever it is that you're teaching. So there's one other thing I wanted to show you, and that was that you can use PearDeck too as an actual way to summatively assess. And I did that a lot last spring when we were completely virtual. So I did a brain and eye dissection, and obviously we weren't in the classroom and I couldn't give them an actual brain or eye. So I asked a whole bunch of questions like this, where I would cover something up here, and then I would want to know, can you tell me, whoops, what that structure is? So.
All right, and once again, I'm going to interrupt our regularly scheduled program here to just show you the student, what the student will see as they're doing some of these PearDecks. So I was just showing you a PearDeck that I had created for eye and brain anatomy, but I realized that when I made that in the spring, I decided to actually just do a Google form quiz instead, so none of the feedback was available. So I'm going to show you this mock practical for the kidney that I made for my Anat and Phys students instead. And I actually am going to show it to you a little bit differently than I was showing on my MacBook, in that you'll notice that I set this one to be student paced. So now they have in the bottom left corner these little arrows where they can move back and forth through the presentation as they're learning and responding to different questions. So as I move forward, you'll notice they get the question posed here on the left, and then they get a way to respond here on the right, a multiple choice. So if they think the answer is adipose capsule, I then provided an answer key on the next slide. And again, they can work through this at their own pace, which is really, really nice. And they can also go back. If it's teacher paced, obviously they would have to be doing that synchronously, both in the classroom and at home. And you would be the only one that can control which slide is coming up at any given time. So I really like this ability to make it student paced too, because I do think it helps with the asynchronous nature of this, or even if a student is absent, they can still get this review. But it doesn't have to just be multiple choice. I'm going to skip through some multiple choice ones. Again, you can have them draw on the slide as well, which is really cool. So draw an arrow that points to the renal hilus. Again, they can change the size of the arrow if they want. They can say right there's the renal hilus, check their answer again, which is really neat. And then there's even like draggables. I was going to show you one of the draggables. Oh, here's a shading one that I created, but there's also a draggable here. So you notice the question says on the upper left kidney, drag the green dot to whatever is the ureter, and then drag the blue dot to the renal artery, and then they could check their answer right here. So I don't know, I just wanted to show you one other different way to use PearDeck that isn't just using it as a way to deliver presentations and check for engagement or understanding, but to also use it as a tool to assess students in a way that I think would be really, really appropriate with a mix of kids both in the building and at home. So thanks so much.
I really love PearDeck. I encourage everyone to give it a shot. If you already have Google Slides presentations anyway, I just think it's such a remarkable way to be able to get that instant feedback from kids to constantly gauge whether or not they're actually learning what you want them to learn. So that is the first tool that I'm going to show you. All right, so for tech tip number 2, we're going to talk all about iPads. In the spring, when Congress passed the CARES Act, one of the things that they did was allocated some money to schools to help them through this hard time, through their pandemic response. And so one of the things that our district did was purchase iPads for us to use this fall, so that the iPad could stand in essentially to be a window into your classroom for the students that are learning at home. So I am going to start this next section of the video with a little bit of a tutorial about how to set these iPads up using Google Meet to essentially be videotaping your classroom in real time. But then I want to move beyond that a little bit with some extra pro tips that can have you, or that can show you how to use your iPads as actual instructional tools themselves, rather than just passive video capture devices. So let's jump right in. The way that you're going to be taught, and I figured I might as well just put this on the video too in case anyone forgets, the way that you're going to be taught to use your iPad is essentially to have your iPad be a window into your classroom. So you're going to have half of your students in your room, maybe cohort A, and cohort B kids will be at home. But since the kids are at home, but they're supposed to be learning in real time, what if you're doing some lecturing for that day? What if you want a discussion that you want them to be able to participate in? The iPad is going to serve that purpose. So the iPad is going to be the stand-in for those kids that are at home. And you're essentially going to be logged into Google Meet to access those kids at home on your school computer. And you're going to log into Google Meet a second time on your iPad and using the camera on the iPad to look at you. So I wanted to show you how to do that. And then I wanted to give you some pointers. So you'll notice I set up the demo already in Google Meet. I did want to just give you that advice too. If you haven't been doing that, I think it'll save you a lot of time. If you already have calendar things set up for your classes, like you'll notice I already have these set up for my spring classes. I created them in Google Classroom. You can actually just create a recurring calendar event. So I could just say biology, 7:50 a.m., Monday through Fridays, ends this day, and it'll propagate in my Google Calendar, but it'll also propagate on all the students' devices. If they go into Google Classroom, they'll see every single day a little link for them to join the class, right? That way you don't have to pull up Google Meet just like this and click join a meeting and then share the join code. It's just a big hassle, but it's also a hassle for you for this reason, right? Now that I've created it in advance, right? And I'm sure you guys have already done this, but when you're creating it, right, you could just add the Google Meet video conferencing. But now that I have it created in advance, I could just join it here, but you'll also be joining, because you have to join this 2 times, you can also be joining it on your iPad. So I'm just going to show you that. So you're going to be using the Google Meet app. And when I have the Google Meet app up, normally it'll just pop up, it'll just pop up with, a little view of whatever the camera's seeing on your iPad. And you'll see, as long as you have it created in your calendar, it'll automatically propagate on the bottom of the iPad there. I know this camera's not picking it up, but I promise you'll see this. And there'll be a little join button. So you don't have to type anything in. You don't have to be futzing around in front of all of your students. You're really just gonna click this join button. And as you can see here, I'm gonna join here. Just shutting off the microphones on my devices so that I don't have 400 different things going on here once. But you'll actually see that I'm in here twice. And then what you're going to do is you're going to find which one is your iPad. And I know this is hard because I'm logged in with the same exact thing, but this one's going to be the one that's your computer. If it says you, this is going to be the iPad. You're going to want to pin that so that the kids at home see you. So this is what the kids at home are going to see. And you're not going to see them, of course, because, I guess you might be able to share it that way, but I'm going to show you in a little bit how I plan to use the iPad a little bit more rather than just using it as a window into my classroom. Also, because to be quite frank, I don't know how comfortable I am being filmed all day long, nor do kids really need to look at this ugly mug all day. So you could just do this, right? Have the iPad facing you, and then the kids at home are going to see you and they'll be able to learn yada, yada, yada. You could also have it facing your whiteboard or facing your interactive TV, and you could turn around right on the whiteboard, blah, 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 and do the teaching that way. But there are a couple of reasons I am not going to recommend that. Now, of course, you could do that. It's probably going to be the easiest way. But as you can see, the quality here is not that great. Even if you maximize quality, there is a way to go in and turn on resolution to 720p. If all the teachers are doing that, I don't know how much bandwidth we're really going to have available, though. So what I'm going to recommend is, instead of using your iPad always as just a way to talk to students, this is going to be super convenient if all you really want to do is talk to them. But if you want to turn around and write on the screen or present something, do some labeling, I'm going to strongly recommend that instead what you do is you use the iPad to screen share whatever you have on the iPad. You can actually turn your iPad into your whiteboard or your interactive television. And it'll work for both kids that are in your room or for kids that are at home. So let me show you what I mean here. I'm going to share the screen. So you'll notice it says I shut off the stuff here again, so you're not getting a lot of craziness. So On the iPad, there's going to be these 3 little dots in the top right corner. Now, I know again, you probably can't see that. Ugh, this is just impossible. There are 3 little dots in the top right corner. I'm going to click Present Screen. And I'm going to start broadcast. Now you're going to see something other than my ugly face now. Here we go. So instead of seeing what the camera sees, you're actually going to get what's natively on the iPad, and you'll notice that the quality is significantly better now, because it's not converting the codec of what's coming in on the camera and pushing that out to students, all these students that you have at home. You're just pulling what's on the actual screen here and pushing that out to home. So I wanted to show you a couple different things that I plan to use this year. So one thing that you could do is you could prep your whole class in a document like a Google Doc or something like that, and then just convert it to a PDF. And what's really cool is the App Store makes all these PDF editors freely available, so that like this is just a guided note packet, for instance, that I use with my students. You can now just go and annotate. So for instance, here, I'm going to go down to a picture that I could actually label with my students. Here, okay, let's do this one. Let's say that I'm teaching them about the main regions of the trunk, right? Instead of having this on the screen behind me, where I'm getting like the weird reflection of the lighting in the classroom, and you're getting the lag of the internet bandwidth and yada, 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 you could just have this PDF done for you, and you could be annotating it right on the iPad, instead of using the iPad as just a camera. So you can grab, you'll notice I have this little pen device up here. You can also have this highlighter. You'll notice I could switch to a highlighter. But I could say, region number 1 is going to be the dorsal region. Sorry, this is not supposed to be like an anatomy lecture. And region number 2 is going to be the ventral region. But then I could almost highlight that. I could use this to say, all right, anything that's this light green color, and I could just highlight on the actual picture. And then I could say, 1A is going to be here, and then anything from here to here is going to be 1B. Oh, it's kind of hard to see, so I'm going to just make my pen size a little bit bigger. Oops, 1B. There we go. But I love the ability to be able to use the iPad to telestrate and do the teaching, rather than having it just be a window into my room, just because it looks nicer. I tried this in the spring with my students, and they really, really preferred this to having like a document camera where I'm just writing on a sheet of paper. And so I thought that similarly, this could be a benefit to us this fall as we're trying to teach kids in our room and at home. The other thing that you could do, though, is this really cool program you can see right here. It's called Microsoft Whiteboard. It's free, so you can create like a OneDrive account for free and use this. Google Keep would do a similar thing. I'm just not sure how good it is with using something like the Apple Pencil, which, by the way, one downside is the school doesn't have in its budget the ability to provide Apple Pencils to everyone. So this is something that you would have to purchase yourself, or something called a Logitech Crayon, which is about half the price. You could, I believe, purchase a very generic stylus, or even use your finger. See, I have to turn on the ability to use your finger, I think. Yeah. Active pen, I think. Yeah, so I could use my finger. I prefer to use the Apple Pencil myself. I just think that it's a little bit easier and allows for a little bit greater dexterity. But if I'm teaching, about let's say I'm doing like a little etymology, and I'm talking about what the word anatomy means, right? I like to be able to just write it and have the kids at home break it up. So I could say Anna, that comes from something that means apart. Tomi comes from the Greek prefix toma, which means to cut. It's nicer to be able to write on the screen here. Obviously, math, you could have math problems on here that you're solving. That's so much nicer than a document camera. I'm thinking of physics. I'm thinking of Miss Matthews doing her art, or Mr. Vanderzand. And, I just think just this blank slate is crazy, crazy beneficial to the learning process and being able to brainstorm and just write stuff up there. If you're asking kids to start brainstorming and do like a like a double bubble, or to do like a Venn diagram, right? You could throw that up there and you could start putting similarities and differences on each side. So I just like this personally a lot better because of all those reasons I mentioned already. You don't get the glare. You don't get the really, really weird pixelatedness of the camera going home to the students at home. And so I just think using the actual iPad as more than just a camera would really, really benefit everyone. So that's what I wanted to show. Oh, there was actually one other thing I could show you, and that was, so I have this presentation actually already going, but you could download, like PowerPoint or Google Slides or whatever, and you could even use the iPad just to present your lectures as well. So I have this urinary system, presentation. I could just pull this up. I could go to present. And then when I'm presenting it, I can mark up. I don't know if you saw that, but there's this pen up here that I could grab. Or if you have the Apple Pencil, it just does it automatically. But I can move ahead and I could say, all right, how big is the kidney? I already have it like up here, right? It's the size of your hand. But if I want kids to be able to guess, I could just start, like how big is the kidney? And then I could have them start throwing it in there. It's like, oh, it's about the size of a bar of soap, they might say, stuff like that. And I like that I can annotate the actual slideshows as well. So I don't know, that's my second big pointer. Use your iPad as a really cool telestration device rather than just a camera. If anyone needs help or wants some suggestions with this, I'm a little obsessed with the iPad because I just find it such a useful tool. So I have been using it in my classroom for a couple years now, and I would love to be able to help. But yeah, that's pretty much it. Well, for tech tip number 3, I really want to focus a little bit on some really simple tools that a lot of you may already be using, but that I think could add a ton of value now to all of our students that will be learning at home on the days that they're not physically present in our classrooms. So most of them actually began as accessibility features, but that's the great thing about accessibility features, things that were rolled out for much smaller subset of the population can be used much more broadly. So I'm going to talk specifically about using subtitling or closed captions to help maybe bridge some audio problems that you may experience with your at-home learners, but then also talk about like question and answer features that are built into Google Slides. So let's take a look. So I just wanted to show you a few tools to make learning at home a little bit easier for those students. I think using closed captions and subtitles is beneficial for everyone, and kids that don't like it can largely ignore it, but I do think that it offers, or all the benefits, the potential benefits that it offers greatly outweighs any potential drawbacks. So I'm going to just show you how to do that if you don't already. I'm going to shut this camera off so we don't have two camera feeds going on. And again, if you know how to do this, skip this section, move right on to the next one. But I do think these are helpful for those of you that don't. So when you're starting a Google Meet live stream, you may know when you click on these stacked dots that you can turn captions on right in the beginning like that, which I think is nice. And then when you join it, you'll notice I'm going to close this right down here. It's going to start transcribing everything that you say in real time at the bottom of the Google Meet window for the students. So Google Meet has it built right in. I think it's really, really nice. Again, if kids have really bad audio coming out of their Chromebooks or maybe having headphone problems, I think this helps alleviate some of those problems. And I just wanted to show you a couple other instances where you can use subtitles where you may prefer them over Google Meet. So if I were to shut the subtitles off, these captions in Google Meet, you can turn them on just for presentations as well. Captions sometimes aren't necessary if you're having just a conversation, maybe just going over some directions, maybe the kids don't want the captions or whatever. But I find that during like lectures or presentations, captions are incredibly helpful. So If you were sharing, in Google Meet, right, if you were presenting your screen and sharing this presentation, and let's say you weren't using PearDeck where the kids could follow along on their own devices, but you're controlling it and pushing it through Google Meet, you can absolutely use captions in Google Slides as well. So if you go to the Present button up here, you'll notice in Presenter View, it does even specifically say Present with Audience Q&A and use speaker notes. But you can turn on captions here in your software as well. So if I turn captions on there, you'll notice what I like about using captions in the actual Google Slides software over Google Meet is that it pushes the content up of whatever it is that you're presenting and puts the captions underneath. If you use Google Meet and use that software for the captioning, unfortunately, those captions may sometimes float over content that is important and hide some of what you're trying to showcase to the students. So I would recommend, if you are doing a lecture, to use the captions built right into Google Slides instead. But also, as I just mentioned, use this Q&A tool if you haven't yet. Really, really great. You can start a new Q&A thing. It'll put it right on the top here. So I can move this away onto my other monitor. Right on the top, you can actually have then a separate device that you have linked up to Slides, and the kids can actually go to this URL and start throwing questions in as you're presenting. I think this is hugely important, obviously, to weigh, the kids that are physically present in your room with questions kids may have that aren't physically present. But I also think this might help students that are a little bit more shy and aren't willing to raise their hand and verbalize a question. They might be more willing to actually just type it. So I think that would be really, really helpful too. Of course, kids could just put questions right into the chat room of Google Meet. But I think this is another really, really great option. So something I wanted to show you if you've never used it before. So I'm going to close out of this. And then there's only one other thing I wanted to show you. If anyone is like me and you're actually more of a Microsoft productivity suite fanboy, I prefer PowerPoint over Google Slides for a multitude of different reasons, but I'm not going to go into that right now. But Microsoft also has closed captioning. So I just wanted to show you how to find that. So if I go to present here, it's going to present for me. There we go. I'm going to drag my little screen down. So when you're presenting here, you can actually turn closed captioning on right here. If you go to the bottom corner, there's a place for closed captioning, and it does similar to what Google Slides does, is it pushes your content up and it puts the captions below. And I think it also does a tremendous job at this real-time transcription. So just wanted to make you all aware of that if you didn't know, because again, while closed captions and subtitles were put in as accessibility features, there is no reason we all can't not get benefit from them. So, all right, the more you know, right? Okay, folks, well, we're on the home stretch here. I have one final piece of software that I would like to show you. And before we get started, I just wanted to throw out there that I'm not a weird Apple shill here where I just push Apple products on everyone. It's just that the software that I'm about to showcase to you, I think does have some advantages over Google Slides or PowerPoint in one respect. And so I thought it might be a piece of software that you may want to consider adding to the list of programs that help you be more successful when doing lectures with half of your students working at home. So let's just jump right in and we'll see if you agree. Thanks. All right, the last and final part of this video is going to be to recommend one last piece of presentation software for those of you that have never used it before. And a lot of people don't know this, but it's completely free. You do need an iCloud account though. So Apple makes a very similar set of programs to Google and Microsoft. These like Pages, Numbers, Keynote, these productivity programs. And Keynote's a lot like PowerPoint, Numbers is a lot like Microsoft Excel, and Pages is a lot like Microsoft Word. Now, why am I talking about this? Who cares? You know, you're already probably using either Google Slides or Microsoft PowerPoint, but there is one thing that Keynote has that the others don't, and it's similar to PearDeck. So I was going to show you that. So again, you could also upload PowerPoints and Google Slides into Keynote. They probably won't convert perfectly, just like when we did the transition from PowerPoint to Google Slides. The conversions are never perfect, but they're pretty good. So I'll show you a conversion that I did. So by the way, in order to do this, you're just going to go to iCloud.com. If you don't have an Apple product, you'd have to create a free username and password. Again, totally free. And then if you go into Keynote, I've just pulled in two PowerPoints for you. I didn't convert this at all. So this is exactly what it looked like in PowerPoint. It did a really, really nice job actually of maintaining all of my different transitions, and even the fonts look pretty accurate to what I have. You'll notice it's not perfect. Like this should be moved over just a little bit, so I could tweak this a tiny bit. You might have to play with it a little, is what I'm saying. Just to make sure that your formatting is better, because obviously there's this weird space and stuff there. But I just mostly wanted to show you why you might want to consider using Keynote for a lecture or two, and that is this feature of how you present it. So normally with PowerPoint or Google Slides, PearDeck is the exception here. That's why I mentioned that first in this video. Kids are just kind of following along with you, and they have to look at your screen in order to see the lecture. But the cool thing with Keynote is you'll notice that I can play the Keynote on this computer, right? Or when I go to play, it says play on Keynote Live. And what Keynote Live is very similar to PearDeck in the sense that anyone that joins my live Keynote will have the presentation on their device. And I think that that's particularly useful now because all the kids at home likely won't be able to see your screen very well. So you could just, open up the live settings and you can invite your class. You could post this right into Classroom, like today in class. You could just take this link. We're going to be talking about this in this presentation, paste the link right into Google Classroom, and then all the kids, when they get to your class, either in person or virtually, can hop onto their Chromebooks and join the presentation, so that when you actually, so I'm going to say playing Keynote Live, when you start the slideshow, as soon as you start it, it'll also start on their devices. And anytime you forward the slideshow, and of course it's taking a little while because it's looking to see if anyone else has joined and no one else has. But anytime you forward the slide or play a video, it will start playing on their devices too, which I just really, really like. There's music coming through my ears right now. The other cool thing, I'm gonna exit out of this. The other really cool thing actually about Keynote Live is when you have videos or audio and that sort of thing, that will actually play through their devices too. So I really love Keynote when it comes to multimedia when you're not in person. So for all those kids at home, Keynote I think is just really, really useful in that way. So again, it's a little bit of a hassle to have to move something from one presentation format to the next. But if the idea is how do I make this work best for my students that aren't physically present with me, I think Keynote is another really great option for you. So that wraps up the 4 things that I was going to talk about today then. All right, folks. Well, that pretty much wraps up this video. I'm sorry that it was longer than I had originally anticipated, but hopefully you were able to just scrub back and forth to the different parts of the video that were actually relevant to you, and that you can use some of that. Again, I don't pretend to be an expert. I've never taught in this weird hybrid virtual model that lies ahead for all of us. But I did have the ability to experiment with some of these things last spring, and they worked really, really well when we were fully virtual. So I think that they'll work even better when we're, half of the students are in front of us and half of the students are at home. At least I hope it will. So if anyone has anything to add or has questions that I might be able to answer that I did not get to, because that's just the way things work, right? You kind of anticipate what the questions are, but you always miss it. If that's the case, if you could add it to the comments below this video, we could all help each other. I'll try to answer any questions that I get that I can answer, and you guys have any tips and tricks, again, throw them down there, because I would love to be able to add more to my repertoire as we go through this beginning of this journey together. So That is it, everyone. It's been great talking to you all. Take care.